You're around a lot of other crazy people, some worse than you, some not as bad as you. And everybody on different levels of their journey. Usually when they have recovery meetings inside the facility, they say, the odds are, you'll have a room of 20 people or so, 30 people, maybe even more. That only about 3 of the people sitting in this room today will actually leave this facility and continue on the path of recovery. I saw my son, and that was it. The second he stepped across the threshold of that doorway, I was like, I'm done. I did it. And I actually went to my counselor. I was there only 5 days. And I said, I'm done. I'm ready to go. I get it.
Yosef today is a Chassidish Yid, and you might think this episode is about the difficult past, overcoming substance abuse, having a Jewish white mother and a Baptist black dad, becoming a baal teshuva, and starting an awesome Orthodox family. But that's not actually what this episode is about. Watch the full episode to see what this really is. This episode is in loving memory of Shimon David ben Yaakov Shleima, Miriam Sarah bas Yaakov Moshe, and Shendel bas Chaim Yehuda Leib. Thank you to this week's sponsors, Colel Chabad, Lease, Bitbean, Qualify Whey Protein, OU Women's Initiative, and Chofetz Chaim Heritage Foundation. Oh, and we have wrapped for filming our Tishba film. The Living L'Chaim subscribers will be able to watch the hour-long film for free. So if you haven't yet subscribed on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you're watching this, here we go. Yosef Waslow, thanks for coming out. There's a lot to talk to you about. I first want to start off with your childhood. It's not I think the average person I interview, everyone has their own type of childhood, but yours is, I think, it's even more different than the usual. Could you describe what your childhood was like?
Sure. I grew up in the 90s in North Philly in an area called Logan, which was historically Jewish. If you ask some of the older Jews in Philadelphia, where I live now, that I lived in Logan, they said, strange, I don't recognize you, but that's because we grew up in a different era. And I grew up in what was, I wouldn't even dare say predominantly black neighborhood. My mother was the only person that was white from as far as I could remember going, distance-wise from my house. So I had an interesting childhood. My neighborhood elementary school, where I was supposed to go, I ended up not going because my mother worked in social services, and it had come up that it was an extremely unsafe corner, I think, drug and violence wise. And so she opted to send us to another school that was a little further from home, but didn't have the challenges of crime necessarily. And that was C.W. Henry, and it was the name of the school in Mount Airy. And even there, it was a predominantly black school. There was a few other students there that we became friends with. And I even remember 2 other kids that were Jewish there. Not religious and not real. One of them was in my grade. His name was Ellie. And we didn't really get along. I was from the more, I don't want to say popular kids, but the mainstream pack.
I'm curious, what did you see yourself as? Like, do you see more like a mix? Like your father's black, your mother's white. Do you see yourself as Jewish? Your father was Christian.
So my father passed away when I was 16. Mm-hmm. He was raised in a Baptist home. Mm-hmm. He himself was not religious, but I always knew Judaism was an ethno-religion, so I always knew and identified with being Jewish to whatever extent that was. But I always knew that I was biracial, black and white. Judaism didn't really mean so much to me, growing up. Didn't appreciate it, didn't know much about it. And frankly, most of my experiences with Jewish people was that they were weird. So definitely not people I wanted to
Not everyone shakes a lulav and esrog? Like, what do you mean? Come on.
Definitely not people I wanted to be around so much. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that really didn't change until I got older. But I always knew I was biracial. But you also have to remember that when I was growing up in the 90s, in the secular world, everybody's mixed with something now. Mm-hmm. When I was growing up, it was really the first generation, I guess, if you will, of biracial people. I'm sure my parents, being of a interracial couple in the 80s, whenever it was that they met, probably raised the ire of a few people still, even in the Philadelphia, North America area. But it definitely was something I struggled with, sort of understanding where it was that I fit in the world, because it wasn't so clear, even though I hung out with, and most of my activities predominantly were around Black people within the African American community, I was obviously different. And I even remember some people made fun of me for it. Like I was the white kid, even though I wasn't white. Like I never really understood why people said that to me. And the few opportunities, I don't know if few is the right word, but the fewer opportunities that I had to be around white people, if you will, I always felt like I didn't really fit in there either, because I always felt like they looked at me like I was the Black guy, So it was weird. I never really felt like I fit in anywhere. And especially in my neighborhood growing up, I remember that, in a Philadelphia city block where I grew up on Wagner Avenue, there had to have been upwards of 50 homes. I didn't know everyone that lived on my block, but the kids that were there, I was one of 3 families who had both parents at home. And my neighbor across the street had a stepfather, and my best friend growing up, who lived about 4 doors down, his father was very abusive. And so he also didn't, I guess, have a normal family, if you will. So as far as a normal, healthy nuclear family, my mother and father got along. They loved us. They took us places. They cared for us. It sounds strange, but it wasn't the norm.
Interesting.
Right? So even having a healthy, happy upbringing, I felt like was bizarre.
That's very interesting. And what was let's say like December time in your house like? Is it feeling like you're in a Baptist environment? You're feeling like you're in a Jewish environment?
I don't remember my father mentioning religion, not once.
Oh, interesting.
I think from conversations I've had with my mother and from being an adult now, kind of knowing the life my father lived through. He came from an abusive household. He was one of 6 or 7 kids. And he was a Vietnam vet. And I think in a lot of ways, he sort of lost his sort of belief in a beneficent God and the beneficence of humanity in a lot of ways. Wasn't a nasty or bitter person, but, I guess growing up, what he went through and going through the Vietnam War, told me stories about, he was in something called Gray's Administration, I think it was. I even told one of my best friend's father was a Green Beret, Special Ops, and my wife's father was also a Vietnam vet. And I remember very clearly when I told the 2 of them what my father did, they were both like, oh my gosh. So essentially what my father did was battlefield cleanup.
Oh, wow.
And I do remember him having a conversation with me once, sort of telling me about how he had to collect various body parts and try to piece them back together. So people got a whole person home for a funeral. So that was his life, right? And it disturbed him very much. But he was a loving person, a caring person. He did a lot with me. Actually, 2 days ago was the day he died, 18 years ago. So, yeah.
Was there a point where you started becoming, I don't know if it's being a rebel in that environment, but like compared to an Orthodox upbringing, like doing things that would be considered like, okay, this isn't kosher?
Right. I went to a YMCA day camp in the summer called the Gershman Y. was a Jewish YMCA. I don't think YMCA usually stands for Young Men's Christian Association.
Right.
It wasn't that, but I don't know what it was. It was called the Gershman Y. And I have a memory of that being a focal point. Maybe I got into an argument with a kid or something and I sort of lashed out. I was a very anxious kid, really had a lot of trouble, channeling and letting out my emotions. And usually when they came out, it was in extremely negative ways. So what exactly was the outcome of that event? I don't really remember what exactly happened to that event. Also sort of slips my mind, but for some reason that's coming up as like a focal point in the beginning of my sort of developing skills to cope with not being able to cope with the world, pardon the redundancy.
So what did you start to do that helped you cope?
Generally speaking, a lot of my childhood involved fighting, lashing out at people, with people, and sort of trying to fit in places where, quite frankly, I didn't belong. For me, the norm was the rough and tough upbringing with those kind of guys.
Mm.
And I remember wanting to be that so bad, but it wasn't me. I went home to a mother and father that loved me.
Mm.
Most of the kids I was raised around didn't. For some reason, again, as strange as it sounds, I wanted to be like them and not be myself. And so that whole lifestyle was, be a tough guy, be a man, don't show how you feel. You have problems, you fight it out, and whoever ends up on top is the right one.
Well,
that's how you resolve issues. Yeah.
Okay, so could you fast forward to the most tormenting time in your life? And what was it like?
Right. So the most tormenting time was probably the periods between ages 16 and 22. Just a little bit of a hakdama. A lot of that surrounded loss. And I remember the first major loss I had in my life was my grandmother, my dad's mom, passed away when I was 11. And I went to her funeral. It was a black funeral. If you've never been to a black funeral, yeah, it's a different world.
What's a black funeral like?
I mean, it's loud.
Uh-huh.
A lot of emotions, a lot of it's a lot of emotions, a lot of unhinged emotions, and it's a challenging environment to be in.
Mm-hmm.
If you're used to it and that's all you know, then that's all you know.
Mm-hmm.
But when you sort of see the way other cultures and communities deal with it, it's rough. And it's not negative. I'm not saying it's negative. Every culture, every community has their way of doing things. Mm-hmm. But the way that I could make the connection is if you could pack all the emotions of a shiva and a shleishim into a 2-hour long period.
Oh, that's a lot.
Right? That's really, really what it was like. And I just remember the only person who was not acting out there was my father. And more than focusing on the funeral, I just focused on my father. And I just remember him for however long we were there, an hour, hour and a half, just staring straight into space and shaking his head like he couldn't accept what happened. And that was a paradigm shifting moment for me. And that sort of not led into, but really, really sort of cemented anxiety and fear that I had developed earlier in life. In the period of 15 turning 16 to about, 19, 20, I lost my best friend, Rob, passed away of leukemia when I was 15. About 7 months later, a friend, Chris, killed himself. Literally a month after that, my dad died. I was in a treatment facility, not at the time my father died, but like right before. And a year after my father died, my grandfather, my Zaidi, who was somebody who was very important to me, passed away. And then about a year after that, my grandmother died.
A lot of death.
And then after that, I lost a few friends. We can have a conversation whether you would call them friends or not, but people that are involved in my life that passed away due to drugs or gun violence, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And not that they didn't hold a meaningful place in my life, but we were together for the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a different kind of friend.
Did that lead you to drinking?
It's an interesting question. So a big part of my story is overcoming addiction and the struggles that come along with that. And it's hard to say whether that precipitated the addiction. I don't think you could say that.
Mm-hmm.
I had my first drink when I was about 13. And from the first time I had that first drink, it was over.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I knew from the beginning it was not a normal experience. I just had a desire to continue doing it. And it's exactly what I did until I was 22 years old.
Okay, so 22, what led to that rock bottom experience?
Rock bottom for everybody's different. I heard once say, you hit rock bottom when you stop digging. You know, for everybody, it's different. For me, I was at a point in my life where my best friend, I'll tell you a story. My best friend from when we were 12, we used to go to Eagles training camp in the summer. He's a big Eagles fan. I also like football. I played high school football. And we used to take my oldest son there. And I remember one time I showed up drunk, and I don't remember the event so much. I was drunk, but what I do remember is he took my son's hand and he said, "You're not going home with him. We don't want you here. And you should just leave." And took my son back to my mom. And that was the last I spoke to him for a while.
It's hard.
Yeah.
And at what point after did you seek help?
Well, that wasn't even the last of it.
That wasn't it. Oh, okay.
No, my wife, who was not my wife at the time, but we were together, decided maybe this wasn't the relationship for her. My mother decided to throw her hands up and say there's nothing else she could do. She gave up. She didn't really give up, but there was nothing else she could do. And I decided to everyone else was wrong. They didn't understand me. You know, I'm going through real things in life, and no one really is sensitive enough to care what I was going through. They're all just ignorant to toss me to the side. And that was the worst point of my life. And that culminated on August 28th, 2012, when I decided to go to a treatment facility, get the help that I needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What, for someone who doesn't know, like, what's that experience like, going to a center like that?
So, we were around a lot of other crazy people, some worse than you, some not as bad as you,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody on different levels of their journey. I don't remember what the statistic is, but usually when they have, recovery meetings inside the facility, they say, the odds are, you'll have a room of 20 people or so, 30 people, maybe even more, that only about 3 of the people sitting in this room today will actually leave this facility and continue on the path of recovery.
Wow.
So the statistics are kind of low, but the experience is really sort of inwardly focused in a traditional 12-step program style treatment facility for addiction. It's very inwardly focused. Your addiction, whatever that may be, is just a symptom of the bigger problem, which is you.
Mm.
And that was hard to hear.
Is there a moment when you accept that you were the one responsible for getting yourself into that situation, or is it a gradual experience?
I don't know if that thought crossed my mind, but I do remember I actually don't remember if they came together, but my wife, my mom, and my son, they all visited me, but I don't remember if they were all three together. I remember my wife told me that God's the only person that could help you. For some reason, that made a lot of sense to me. And I saw my son, and that was it. The second he stepped across the threshold of that doorway, I was like, I'm done. I visited my father when he was in a treatment facility when I was, I don't remember, 14 or 15. I just remembered that feeling and knowing that I could have potentially caused that feeling to somebody else. He was young. I don't even know if he remembered this. Possibly. I mean, I'm not him. But I did it. I was done. And I actually went to my counselor. I was there only 5 days. And I said, I'm done. I'm ready to go. I get it. And I remember she told me, you can't leave. You're not done. You have to be here for a lot longer. And if you choose to leave, you're going to be leaving AMA, which means against medical advice. And I said, you don't get it. I'm finished. I said that I'll be back in a year and I'll show you that I did it. And I left against medical advice, not recommended. I never went back, but I did keep it together, Baruch Hashem.
Wow. Okay. At this point in your journey, are you a baal teshuva or not yet? Not yet. Okay. So we'll get to there. But before we get there, I want to ask you about, like, you obviously had a very clear point where you see your son and you're like, I am done with drinking. I don't want it taking over my life anymore. Like any addiction or any struggle someone has, there's moments of clarity and there's also moments of not so much clarity. How did you go about, and I imagine still go about, like fighting it off and making sure that you're off the wagon, on the wagon? I don't remember the phrase, but not drinking.
I started life as a child over again in my early 20s. And I got myself a mentor that helped me. And I had to earn back everyone's trust. And it was really, really, for all intents and purposes, a humiliating and humbling experience. Before I got back to my job that I had, I was going to outpatient meetings 2-3 times a day. And then, so I had like a morning Seder, afternoon Seder, Kilu,
Right.
And then like I went home like any good husband would do, and we had dinner and maybe watched a movie, and then I woke up and did it all over again. I never really looked at it from this perspective, but I am now. It's probably really challenging for my wife. It was like she had all these kids to take care of because she dropped these ones off at daycare and then dropped me off at outpatient, and then she went to work.
Wow.
And then she picked everyone up afterwards. I was an adult baby. And it's hard. Something that's meaningful to me is there's a concept in Chassidish called Avas Atzmos. It's normal for a person to love themselves. And some people may think that's kind of strange. People struggling with mental health, that type of thing, they maybe don't really like themselves that much. But that's not really what's being said. What's really being said is that there's a core of the human being that sort of looks out for him or herself to sort of sustain life. And certain things that are a front to that stability, right? A person can't be soivel that. A person can't really get to that point. Meaning to say, I might not really enjoy who I am as a person. Baruch Hashem, I do now, but saying this is the thought process. I might not really enjoy who I am as a person, but I'm not going to stoop to such a level to say that everything that I did wrong is my fault, right? That's detrimental, right? And so to do that at the age that I did it and with the mindset that I had was really, really hard. Really, really hard. And that holds a lot of people back from making a needed and critical change. And not everybody needs to make such a drastic change because they're harming themselves and others. And when your life is unmanageable, but you're still sort of scraping by and you're not harming yourself and you're not harming other people, you may say it's easy to say it's not me, it's X, Y, and Z that's causing these troubles in my life. But everything in life, no matter how challenging, right, to the most bottom depth of the most horrid neighborhoods in the country, if that's what you're involved in, or you're just a businessman struggling to get by and go home and love your family when you're still trying to keep your business running and you're making a good salary, it's very easy to look at what the difference is, because I'm not that guy. It's very hard to say if I would do this different or if I would change this outlook or approach in my life, if I would do something different and take a better hold and manage my life, then everything would be better. That's avos atzmos. That's not. It's hard for people to kind of look inward, and that's really where the change starts.
Fascinating. We'll be right back this week's episode. And so many people come up to us and they say, we love what you're doing. Thank you so much. And one of the things that I encourage people to do is when you support our supporters, our advertisers, you really help us. So if you have a passion to help out the people in Colel Yisroel who need it most, you could go ahead and go to our friends at Colel Chabad and download their Pushka app. Now you might say, I don't want another app on my phone. But let me tell you why it is so simple, so easy, and you could give tzedakah every single day. Now, here's the pitch. You sign up for some organization and you give them money. Maybe it's a recurring fee. Maybe it's a one-time donation. It's nice. I personally don't always feel like I'm actually giving. When you download the Pushka app for Colel Chabad, you literally have the opportunity every day to give the money. It's a cute little Pushka. You give it $1, $5, and you could give tzedakah no matter where you are in the world. Now, Colel Chabad is special because Colel Chabad has been around for over 200 years, and they give the neediest Jews in Israel. It doesn't matter who they are, what background they have. They do a background check to make sure that they are the people in need, and it's supporting people for Shabbos, giving them food, giving them clothes, actually giving the neediest people some Talmidei Chachamim, some people that don't know much about Torah, but they are our friends, our brothers, and our sisters. So download the Pushka app. It's pushkapp.cc/inspo. That's pushkapp.cc/inspo, and start giving and donating every single day, or once a week, or once a month. Now, more and more businesses are turning to Bitbean because they are not just keeping up with AI. They're helping companies actually use it in a practical way. They integrate AI into the systems business rely on every day, making teams more efficient, reducing repetitive work, and improving the customer experience. Most companies still run on systems that are slow, they're outdated, they're maybe patched together, and that leads to wasted time, frustrated employees, and tasks that should take minutes taking hours. So it's not just what happens behind the scenes. Your onboarding, scheduling, billing, inventory, communication, reporting, and customer experience all depend on the right technology. When one piece is inefficient, the entire business feels it. And that's where Bitbean stands out. They don't sell off-the-shelfware software. They take the time to understand your business, identify what's slowing you down, and build custom solutions that streamline your entire operation. Now with AI integrated, where it creates real value. Whether you're in healthcare, law, real estate, logistics, retailer, any other industry, Bitbean has helped organizations and companies work smarter, reduce errors, and grow. They offer a free consultation with no pressure, just practical insights into how your business can operate more efficiently. Visit Bitbean.com and don't work harder, but work smarter. Now, we're going to get back to Yosef's story, but right before that, I just want to end off with this. If you have watched this episode, you can see the intros and outros. I've lost some weight. I've been taking my health a lot more serious. In November, I had a little of a health scare, and that made me try to refigure out my health and what comes into my body, because it was a stomach thing, and Baruch Hashem, I'm great now. And something that I've been doing to improve myself is this. Protein was never really on my radar, and I figured if I ate dinner, I was probably fine. But over the last year or so, I've had enough people, friends, doctors, even family members tell me, Yaakov, need more protein. So I finally started paying attention. And honestly, I feel so much better. Then I ran into another problem. I tried to keep Cholov Yisroel, and I realized there really weren't many protein powders out there that checked all the boxes. Either didn't taste good or didn't mix well, or the kosher supervision was something I've literally never heard of. And that's when I found Qualify. It is a premium whey protein powder developed in Israel for professional athletes and brought to the US by teshuva. Yeah, that's teshuva from Israel. Each scoop has 25 grams of protein and 5.5 grams of BCAAs. So it's not just kosher, it's actually built for people who train. And it's Cholov Yisroel under the supervision of Vad Mahadran and the OU. So there's literally no guessing involved. Honestly, that's what sold me. It's how smooth it is. It's not chalky texture, it's not clumping, it just mixes in a shake, in my smoothie. Even I started in yogurt, and I've been having it most mornings before I run out the door. And some days it's generally the easiest 25 grams of protein I get all day. So if you've been looking for an easy way to get more protein into your day without compromising on Cholov Yisroel, I think you'll really like this one. Search Qualify Protein on Amazon and use code DELICIOUS10. I will spell that because that is not an easy word. DELICIOUS10. And it has to be all caps, all in caps lock. And you'll get 10% off. And if you make it part of your routine, subscribe and save gets you an extra discount on top of that. They have multiple delicious flavors. And again, use code DELICIOUS10 on Amazon for 10% off. Now back to this week's episode.
So what point did this light bulb come up to be a part of Orthodox Judaism, become a baal teshuva? And I guess also walk us through the process of, like, I'll classify you as Chassidish.
Sure.
You know, I mean, Shtreimel and Shabbos at this point. But yeah, like how did you get there? You take us through that journey.
Yeah. So a lot of it really started, one of the tenets, if you will, of recovery is that admit to yourself, to God, and to another human being that your life has become unmanageable. And essentially that you need help. I'm paraphrasing. I really always believed in a higher power, a sort of creator in the universe, if you will, but never really knew how to classify that. I mean, my growing up was really, what were the difference of the world religions? That, you know, if you could imagine a mansion that had, you know, 20 different entrances, you know, those different entrances represent the different religions of the world. And that mansion is God and God's house, right? And that's really just how I viewed it. Maybe that's not totally wrong, but there are some fundamental irreconcilable differences between Yiddishkeit and other religions, and even amongst the other religions. And you can't downplay it because it really just cheapens everything. And so I believed in a God, and I spent time trying to discover what that was. And the majority of the world is in agreement that the God of the Bible is God, right? I mean, you have over 2 billion Muslims, 2 billion Christians, however many Yiddilis there are in the world.
There's like 17 of us.
Yeah. But the one thing that's in agreement, well, really two things are in agreement, that the God of the Bible is God, and that it started with the Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
I was for sure the only Orthodox Jews in the world lived in somewhere in Mea Sha'arim with black hats and, would throw stones at anybody that wasn't like them. I'd never met an Orthodox Jew. And if I would have saw you, 20 years ago, I would have no clue that you were Orthodox. I just, I didn't know.
Right.
It's just because you're wearing a yarmulke,
Right.
a tzitzis, that makes, I had no idea. I didn't even know what these things were. Maybe you forgot to take it off after you were leaving your kid's bar mitzvah or something. I don't know. That's probably what I would have thought. So you could Google and then Chabad.org shows up. Or you could, go to, I don't know, speak to a church or something. I developed a friendship with a pastor. And we spent a lot of time talking. We used to go out to lunch together. And really, I think he was trying to make me a Christian. It didn't work. Eventually, that friendship ended because I asked too many questions and he just wanted to be friends with people that loved Yashka. And I didn't fit into that category. So, I bought a Bible. I started reading it, and it sounds strange now, but I actually Googled, where should you start? And of course, start in this section of the Christian Bible pops up in this section, whatever. But I would ask you a question. If you bought a Harry Potter book, would you Google where to start?
No, I would start from book 1 in the first sentence.
Right. So that was sort of my process. I wanted to get the most parv Bible you could possibly get. So I got a Reformed edition. I felt it was fair, right? They even used some of the old Christian texts to inform their interpretations, right? And from what I knew, they weren't necessarily people that had a strong enough belief in God that it affected change in their life necessarily. So it was basically academics who wrote an interpretation of the Bible, and I thought it was fair. So I started from the beginning. I spent some time when I was younger as a teenager. Philly has a big Muslim population, not necessarily Arab Muslim, which is true, but when I was younger, a black Muslim population. So a lot of kids that I grew up around were Muslim or became Muslim. So I spent a lot of time learning about it, interested in it, so forth and so on. I even had like a mentor. He wasn't an imam, but he was a Muslim older guy. So I learned some about that. And religion generally always fascinated me, always learning about it. A belief in living a life dedicated to God always fascinated me, even since I was younger. I'm still fascinated by religion, the human capacity to believe in something greater than yourself and live your life by whatever those dictates are. So jumping back now to where we are, me reading this Bible, as you know, when you come to, now I know it's Parshas Emor, that has all the holidays. I didn't know at the time that's what it was, but I came to what we would now refer to as Parshas Emor. And, they had a day of blowing, a day of affliction, all these different things that reminded me of things that I did as a kid. Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah. And it was my first interaction with a faith system. Thankfully, it was the faith system that I belonged to, but my first interaction with a faith system where if you look at this 3,000-year-old text, however old it is, and you look at the people who are living by it now, in its core, there's no variance. For example, in other religions, some of the holidays that they have are considered non-biblical holidays. It's because they're not there. Right?
Yeah.
And so I found it refreshing, that sort of connection and that ability to stay dedicated and true to what was. And so from then, I'm cutting out some things, but from then, after doing that learning and discovering and that type of thing, I became interested.
Mm-hmm.
And this is actually like so fascinating. I wanted to buy an Orthodox edition of the Bible. I have no idea how this brand or company popped up into my head. But for some reason, I had a compulsion to look up Art Scroll. I have no idea why. I didn't even know if I was going to land on for some reason, I figured it was Jewish. For some reason, I figured it had something to do with texts. I had no idea what was going to be on there. We didn't have Art Scroll growing up. Like when I went to Jewish Sunday school, like we didn't have a Parsha class.
Right.
After like third or fourth grade, and like we even stopped learning the Aleph base. Wow. So I don't know why it popped up into my mind. Like I had no shaykhis, but it did. And I bought a chumash, and I started going to a conservative shul on Saturday mornings, and I was the only person under 50 there. And even the rabbi thought it was like a little strange. Like, don't you have something better to do on a Saturday morning than come here? It was like 10 people there, and they have a gabbai who had a Reconstructionist conversion. So I don't even know if halachically we would consider him to be Jewish. But he actually taught me the Aleph base, and he taught me Birchas HaTorah. And I just, for weeks, months, I went around with these cards in my pocket that were Aleph base cards. I learned 5 new letters every week until I got to the end. It only took about a month or so. And every day I'd go through Aleph base Gimel Dalet Hey. And then by afternoon, I'd mix them up and try to remember them. And they had the gematria on the back. So the way that I remembered the order of the Aleph base was by which number everything was.
Oh, interesting.
And then I started reading that Bluestone Chumash, even though I had no idea what was being said. And that's sort of how I developed and started to learn at least biblical Hebrew. And then my wife, who was not Jewish at the time, she loves a bargain. She'll probably laugh if she hears this. But she heard about this free trip to Israel for Jewish people. And she said, you'd be crazy to let this up. And I went on a birthright trip. And even when I was there, I wasn't going to see another country. We went all the way up north to the border with Lebanon, all the way down to Eilat, and all in between. My favorite part was Yerushalayim. That was my favorite part. And I just thought it was so cool to be there. And this was really a change in where my desire to get more in tune with Judaism developed. It was the first time in my life I had ever seen what I felt were normal Jewish people. Like just Yosef Waslow, just going in shorts and thong sandals with a kippah on that's like the size of a $50,
Right.
To me, it was like so cool. And I bought a kippah and tzitzis. I came home and my wife, like, she was like, you're crazy. This is not why you went, and these types of things. Like, you're just supposed to get a free trip. You're like, not come back like this, And I remember from then, I got a sitter from Hanukkah, which was her idea to start celebrating. I asked her to buy me. Art Scroll had just released the Medrash Rabbah on Genesis, on Bereshis, and I asked her to get it for me. And I just remember she was like, but this is something I looked it up. Only Orthodox Jews, read the Midrash. And I think she was like really nervous that I was kind of like going off the rails. And I was.
Yeah.
But so she was right, as she usually is. And that sort of started this. Yeah.
Is there an official point where your wife is on board to become Jewish and you're fully ready to become Orthodox?
So I don't want to misrepresent anything about my wife's story,
Okay.
but from my perspective, this is it. My wife grew up in a pretty conservative Christian household. I would think that they were evangelical. That was just my own assessment. She never told me that. Her parents never told me that. But they went to churches that had more of a, evangelical outreach sort of approach to Christianity. And she was very bothered. We really didn't go, and she didn't make the kids go to church or anything like that before. But at that point, she was like, maybe we ought to start going to church or something. And I was like, whatever. I mean, I wasn't, at this point, even though I still wanted Orthodox Jewish interpretations, I didn't
subscribe. You weren't subscribed yet.
I didn't subscribe. And I didn't know that there was really a stira, right? I didn't know that,
Right.
You know what I mean?
You don't know the full rules of it yet. You're
Right.
like, okay, great. My wife is from that background. Let's explore that for our kids.
Right. And then we went to a Reformed shul also. And after these sermons at the church, I would go and try to slug up the pastor. Like, what are you saying about this or that or whatever it was. I remember he was really cool. I remember one time I was challenging him really tough on some things, and his kid was standing there. One thing that bothers me really bad is when people go after others' children from a religious perspective, right? Meaning you can be parv and you can explain to another person's child what it is you believe and why. But from a perspective of saying things that will be paradigm shifting, that really bring into question what the child should and does believe, I have a problem with, especially because most of it's done surreptitiously. So anyway, I remember the pastor's son, standing there. And I said, if you don't want to have this conversation in front of your child, I'm okay. I just, I want to be respectful of the way you're trying to bring up your child. He didn't mind. He was like, oh, ask away. And we didn't see eye to eye, but we had really good conversations that I remember he challenged me on why I didn't agree with this, that, and nothing that he said I ever really found convincing, obviously. But it really helped me to sort of hash out in my mind why choose Judaism over anything else and help to cement what the difference is between Judaism and other things, or that coupled with, organizations like Jews for Judaism and Rabbi Tovia Singer, which I never really wanted to be anything else other than Jewish at that point. But when you're raised in a secular environment, right, the movies I grew up with, the songs they made you sing in elementary school, the mall when you went to in December, right? Everything has this sort of, you got off for Easter. You didn't get off for Passover. You got off for Easter. So everything sort of had this connotation that Christianity was the default, right? So to hear from Jews for Judaism, I think that's Rabbi Michael Skobach and Rabbi Tovia Singer, what exactly a Jew believes really, really helped to get me sort of where I was or where I am. And at that point in time, a little bit longer, my wife and I would have a lot of conversations. And I think she really was nervous not to believe in what she was brought up with. And she got involved through a friend at work at this challah bake. It was through Ben Salem Jewish Outreach Center, one of the most wonderful places in the world. And my wife went to this challah bake. And then after that, they had a Shabbos, I think it was the Shabbos Project that week. And then they had a Motzei Shabbos concert. And we went. My wife said, we're going to go here. At this point in our life, we started having like a Saturday night or a Friday night dinner, like a Shabbos meal. We stopped going to the Reform shul because we felt that there was sort of like a contradiction between why our services starting after Shabbos started. It was sort of weird because we had no problem driving home on Shabbos.
Right.
But sort of like driving there on Shabbos to drive home was like already a step too much. That was what our thinking was. And I was petrified to go there. My wife really pushed for us to go to the Ben Salem Jewish Outreach Center. I was like, oh, now I'm really going to be interacting with Orthodox Jews. They're going to hate me, right? And so, what do you know?
Why do you think that? Why did you think that you'd be hated?
I don't know. I felt that Orthodox Jews were probably, like most religious extremists, very small-minded. And a lot of experiences that I had in high school I went to a very interesting high school. Just to sidestep for a minute, I graduated from Abington High School, and within that high school, 7 different elementary schools dump into one middle school and high school. And so you get kids from neighborhoods that have public housing, and from a 10-minute drive, you could go to multi-million-dollar homes. That's all in one high school.
Wow.
So it was a really interesting experience. And I remember the Jewish kids there knew I was Jewish, but we didn't really get along because I sort of felt like they were very cliquey and didn't really want to be friends with people that weren't like them. I never really got invited to any of the bar or bat mitzvahs, those types of things. Some of us got along, but not like hanging out outside of school. So I just, I'm using now my parlance for how to explain it now, but al-achas kama v'kama, you go to the Orthodox, they're really not going to like you, right? And so I remember my wife called. It was right after the sun went down. And I called and the phone went straight to voicemail. And I was like, oh, thank God. I was like, oh, no, they're not done. He's not picking up. We can't go. Like 5 minutes later, she's like, call back. Same thing. And he didn't answer. Thank God again. So she made me call back again and he answered. And I just felt like a lump in my throat. I didn't know what to say. Anyway, we showed up and this square chassid walks out. And this was like mamish my nightmare. Yeah. He's really the sweetest guy I've ever met in my life. He doesn't live in Ben Salem, but he would come to Ben Salem from time to time. I don't know if he wants his name mentioned, so I won't, but he walked out and he had this flip phone and he has this hat and, he was like shouting in Yiddish. Really, they're just excited people. He wasn't angry at anybody. And I was like, this is terrible. And I was so scared. Anyway, we walk in. He showed me how to get in. And then I was directed to the head rabbi because the outreach rabbi and the head rabbi have the same name, Moshe. And so I was like, you're not who I spoke to. The head rabbi, sweetest man ever. He's just so calm, so sweet, never wants to offend anybody. And he's just really the most unassuming person you'd ever meet. And I was just like, you're not who I spoke to. And then finally the outreach rabbi came up and he's young, cool, excited. How are you? First thing he asked me was if I was Jewish. I said, yeah. We ended up moving into Ben Salem some years after this event occurred. But when they told me the story afterwards, they were like, for sure, we thought you were the one that wasn't Jewish and everybody else was.
That's funny. Right. Of course.
Yeah. But,
what's funny? If I remember correctly, it's the third time in your life, maybe more, where someone from a Christian background, in this case your wife, was pushing you to have more clarity with your Judaism.
Right.
You had it with the pastors and
right.
It's a very interesting
right
thing going on over here. Okay, cool.
Ooh, my favorite part for this week's episode is coming up. But first, Tisha B'Av is about more than remembering what we've lost. It's about discovering what still can bring us together. This year, experience Hidden, the powerful new worldwide Tisha B'Av event from the Chavis Chaim Heritage Foundation, the original filmmakers behind the annual Tisha B'Av productions that have inspired hundreds of thousands around the world. In this moving 2-hour film, you'll hear from some of today's most respected Torah voices, including Harav Eli Melech Biederman, Rav Yisachar Frand, Rav Pesach Kron, Rabbi Joey Haber, and Charlie Harari. Through compelling stories and powerful insights, Hidden explores the goodness that exists beneath the tension, misunderstandings, and divisions we often see. It's an uplifting reminder that even in the difficult times, there's far more kindness and unity within the Jewish people than we sometimes realize. Whether you're watching on your own, with your family, or as part of a community gathering, this is a meaningful way to elevate your Tisha B'Av and come away inspired with practical lessons you can carry throughout the year. Visit tishab'av.global to reserve your access today. And don't forget to use promo code INSPIRE10, INSPIRE10, caps lock, INSPIRE10 at checkout to receive 10% off your purchase. Don't miss this year's worldwide Tisha B'Av event, Hidden. It may just change the way you see people around you and yourself. Now, very, very soon, my wife has to turn in her lease, and I already know exactly who I'm calling. Saul from Wheels Lease. Why? Because I don't want to spend hours calling different places, comparing prices, negotiating, or wondering if I'm actually getting the best deal. I just tell Saul what I'm looking for, our budget, and the kind of car we want, and he makes the magic happen. The whole process is easy, stress-free, and saves us a ton of time. So if you're looking for a new car, give Saul a call at 718-871-8715. You send them an email, inspire@wheelslease.com, or you go on the website, wheelslease.com/inspire. And of course, you could send them a WhatsApp in the link down below. Last thing I have to say before we jump in, something that we see is how easy it is that sometimes for Jewish men to connect. I mean, we have systems in place, whether it's going to shul, learning with a Rav or a Rebbe, or even a Chavrusa. How can women connect? Now, what if just a few minutes a day could help you complete all of Nach? As Torah Mecha Nach Yomi begins, Nevi'im Achronim, now is the perfect time to join or catch up if you've fallen behind. Learn one parak a day with inspiring sharing from renowned educators and become part of a global community of thousands of women learning together. Sign up at ouwomen.org/nach or listen on the Torah Mecha app or Spotify. To learn more about the OU Women's Initiative, visit ouwomen.org. Of course, click the link down below. Now back to this week's episode.
What led you, and I know I'm kind of fast forwarding, but like, you know, and it's your life, so we obviously could spend like 40 years on it, but like what pushed you towards Chassidish Judaism?
It's interesting. I think many Baalei Tshuva trend towards Chassidish.
Why is that?
Number one, from the outside, it's much more extreme. And
I would think the opposite. Why would they want more extreme? Wouldn't they want more?
You're talking about people who are upending their lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't they want extreme?
Interesting. Okay,
is really the question.
Right. Yes. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing that's unique about us is, you know, usually outreach targets like families and then, you know, not targets, but helps them along,
Mm-hmm.
you know, maybe make some challahs, light some candles. But we understand you're not going to flip your life upside down.
Right.
Right. And then they have the young professionals, sort of let's get you before you get too far away type of thing. That comes off negative, but I don't mean it that way. We're unique in that we were married with kids that at one point in time, albeit very young, spent a year, except for our oldest daughter, and kids
who just got married.
Public.
Mazel tov.
Mazel tov. Yeah. She just got married.
Wow.
Had spent a year or so, the younger kids, in public school.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's total craziness to think. But the warmth of it, the stories, the I don't know. I was Makarev through Hasidim and people from, you know, Lakewood style hashkafa.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my best friends, whenever he always challenges me. He's like very, 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 very yeshivish. I don't mean any offense if you're listening to this. But whenever I would tell him why I liked Chassidish, he's like, "Oh, well, you could find that in the third parak of Madregas HaAdam and from the Vardik and that." Yeah, he was like, "I'll learn Chassidish with you if you sit down and learn Madregas HaAdam with me." And so it's hard to always put a finger on it.
Mm-hmm.
I think as far as a general approach to life and hashkafa, it's something that I personally identify with more. It's something that I find the answers and resolutions to things much more at peace inside me To give you a very, very brief example, I learned Shulchan Aruch with the Reish Colel of the community I live in now. And we were just going through brachas in the morning. I think it was Hanhagas Habayker or something like that. And we were going through most people I don't think would know this, but the real for the brachas that we make, and so forth and so on. All these different brachas. There's actually the Mechaber, the Shulchan Aruch brings down an actual, when you wake up, you say Moedei Ani. You actually say Sha'akol Tzarki when you put your shoes on.
Yeah.
Right? So there's actually a formula for when these things should be said. We just sort of, say it
in one clump.
Right. But the one that's Eizer Li B'Gvura, Shulchan Aruch brings, you say that when you put your belt on. So how would we answer, how does that make sense? Right? So the way the Rosh Kolah answered me,
which for those who don't speak Hebrew, it means like the blessing is like thanking God for giving us strength. Right. Okay.
Who girds Israel with strength.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you know, Chassidim wear gartels. Maybe this is me now going back and proving why I feel the way I feel. But how does it make sense that putting on a belt girds Israel with strength? Doesn't make any sense. I mean, I don't feel stronger when I put my belt on, right? The whole inyan of a gartel, the whole inyan of a belt is to have a hefsek from the lower part of your body to your upper part, that the erva doesn't see your libai, right? And so the only real way to explain that difference that makes sense for me is that in its root, Chassidish, which is really just the modern day offspring of Kabbalah and so forth and so on, those sort of like the inner aspects of Torah just make more sense to me. And to kind of put it in another way.
Hold on, but to explain it, the reason it's giving strength also maybe, again, another reason is maybe because when do you put on a gartel? When you're about to daven.
Right.
So maybe that's where we're getting strength from. Well, let's say me, I don't wear a gartel.
Right.
Doesn't really make so much sense to place. I was giving you another further.
But one of the simonim of Klal Yisrael is their tzenuakite. I don't know if I just made up a word, but
modesty,
right? And so that's a very, very important part of being a religious Jew. And so it's kind of hard to say, oh, we only do this for davening, right? From one perspective, being a tzanua is part and parcel of what it means to be a frum Jew, right? And so to have that separation from the lower, more base parts of human nature to the more higher aspects of human nature is part and parcel of what it means to be a Jew in this world. That's what makes Judaism different, right? We're not trying to leave this world. We're trying to make the world a better place. We're trying to learn how to live in this world and not be pulled down by it and focus on bringing out the better aspects in nature and the world.
The integration.
Right. And so the way that I look at it is there's two different aspects of modern day Judaism, and this is not to exclude Sephardim. They're already more, Kabbalistic in nature, but just from the perspective of my kiruv, right? So there was Hasidim and there was Litvish, and Rav Itchemeyer Morgenstern, who's Rav in Eretz Yisrael, somebody that I really admire, has a kuntrus called Rachel Valeya, and he brings in the name of the Arizal that there's two types of neshamas in the world, Rachel and Leah. And now that I'm on the spot, trying to remember, Leah is more the aspect of Eved Hashem. And Rachel is more the aspect of bringing the aura of the Shekhinah into the world, right? Which one's more important? Neither. One's not more important. Without a Rachel and Leah, we wouldn't have Klal Yisrael.
Right.
They're both needed.
Integral, right.
Right? But there's two different Mechalchim in life. And the Mahalach of Eved, which is more the Gedolei Lita, which is really something to aspire to and really something that's very precious, right? That I get pleasure just from having the ability of doing Avodas Hashem. That's it. That's what's called Lishma. That's what's called, Avodas Hashem for its own sake, serving God for its own sake, his own sake. It's just to do it because I was told to do it. Right?
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. It's not me though. Me, I'm more of the sort of ethereal, sort of warmth, having a meaning and sensations. Not that it's not logical, but that there's a part of bringing down the Shekhinah in the world. Sometimes you have this inspiration. Sometimes you have this flash of light. Sometimes you get something from sharing with people, with others, right? That you may not necessarily be able to get from sitting down learning a Sugya Gemara, right? Now, if you come back and you have that light, if you have that this iris before, you can now come back and find it in the Gemara, right? Gemara in Avodah Zarah says, Ein Adam lo moed Torah ela b'chafetz libay. Person can only learn Torah from where their heart desires. Either way, you have to learn Torah, but there's different ways of doing it. The one way is I'm just happy from learning a good halacha through everything,
which is Leah energy.
Yeah, I believe so.
And then there's Rachel, which is
right. I'll sum this up in a story. My friend used to stay in a bungalow colony, and they had this guy they called the Shalom Zacher guy. So Hasidim lived on one area of it, and the Litvish lived on this area of the bungalow colony. And why do they call him the Shalom Zacher guy? So a Shalom Zacher is after a boy is born, the first Shabbos that he's in this world. So people get together and they make brachas and sing songs and whatever. We won't get into exactly why, but it's effectually what happens. Chassidish is really, you have in Sadiger, you have in Bells, other Chassidish, I don't know. There's this whole inyan of just sitting down and sharing struggles and avodas Hashem and stories, right? The whole Malava Malka is saying Maisim of the Baal Shem Tov, the Rebbe Reb Melech, whoever you could think of. There's a certain chizik you get from hearing these things. So anyway, the Shalom Zacher guy was trying to get this one chaver that would leave like at 10 o'clock at night from having a night seder after a Shabbos meal or 11 o'clock at night to sit down and just schmooze. Just sit down, talk with us. Like, we want to get to know you, share with you, sing with you. The guy, no, I have to get home. And I'm done night seder, I have to go home. Right? So the next week, this guy was leaving the base medrash. So the Shalom Zacher, the chassid, he said, sit down. It's a Shalom Zacher. So the Litvish guy, he said, okay, for a Shalom Zacher, it's a mitzvah. I'll sit down, I'll make a bracha, whatever. So he did. The next week, this yid was leaving the base medrash again, and the chassid was still sitting there. They asked the yid, sit down again. So the yid said, I'm not sitting down. You know this about me. I'm done night seder, I'm going home. Right? That's my avodah. So the chassid said, but I'm having a Shalom Zacher. What I'm told in the story, the Litvish guy chapped that he didn't really appreciate it. It was a joke that it was a Shalom Zacher. But that's really the difference. One of the differences. Meaning there's sort of like a way of reaching Hashem through being together, from sharing our struggles, through friendship and stories, sort of like what we're doing here now. And then there's another way, which is just being an Eved Hashem, showing up to davening, which everyone should do, but, learning, morning, noon, and night Seder, nonstop, unwaveringly, so forth and so on. And I'm not making a qualitative decision that one's better than the other. I'm just saying I identify more
Right. What
with
works for
one.
you? And we'll get to the end questions, but before you mentioned the similarities between you going through the I don't know what to call it, recovery process of
Sure.
like
Yeah.
you know, in your journey of when you're dealing with others who have, you know, been alcoholics, are alcohol, whatever it is, and a lot of it is just sitting together, that you see a very big similarity with Chassidish. So that's very interesting.
Right. They're definitely not the same.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
But and maybe we could talk about that, but you'd be surprised about the amount of Jews that are getting help and that probably need help.
Let's talk about that, because it's very commendable of you to come on and talk about your struggles. And I think in our community, I think in any community, it's easily taboo to talk about our struggles or one's struggles, but especially in like an Orthodox community where it's close knit. Everyone often has this impression of like everyone else is making so much money, they have no mental health challenges. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
because we're so close knit, it's like people aren't as open often. So could you talk about what you've seen?
Right. It's a fantasy and a lie to think that because of the amount of money that you need to be an Orthodox Jew, and because of the amount of pressure, social pressures to go to chasanas, to make the right type of bris, the right type of shalom zachar, to wear the right type of clothes, to have your kids look a particular way, to pay a tuition, it's crushing everyone. And even the people who are making it, they're crushed by the amount of pressure that is on them to keep these companies afloat. I was able to have a conversation with somebody who is extremely well-to-do, extremely well-to-do. And the amount of pressure that they're under, because they have 1,000 from people that work for them, and all those yom tovs that they're responsible for making sure people get paid for, and all the bar mitzvahs and chasanas and retirements and mortgages that's on his cheshbon. It's okay. So he has a 7-figure salary, maybe even more. But look at the weight that comes along with it. I'm not saying whether you should or should not want it. A lot of people might scoff and say, well, I'd rather have that problem. But in other words, it's a tremendous amount of pressure. It's a tremendous amount of pressure. And there's so many people who have gotten so alienated from the Yiddishkeit because they're just sort of going through the motions, because they never have really been taught it in a deep and meaningful way, and how, like the Shar B'tachan of the Cholov says that it's a mitzvah to go to work. It's a mitzvah to provide for your family. They've never been taught that. It's a mitzvah to learn in Colel all day, which is. It's amazing. It's beautiful. It's not for everyone, right? And for the people who aren't it, what are they? Now I'm chutz l'machana because I don't want to have 3 sedarim. I just want to have a night seder, and then I'll work during the day. I'm not a ben Torah. I care about God. I love learning. I love doing these things. That's what these people think. But the idea that now I'm somehow outside of the fold because I'm not kovei itim for the 18 hours that I'm awake a day, it's crushing.
Have you experienced because of your past and your I guess ability to understand the struggles of, you know, being an alcoholic, and then to see the Jewish community, we're not immune to, you know, challenges. Have you been there to see / maybe provide insight to young Jewish kids, teenagers, adults who are struggling with alcoholism?
It's a Hester Panim. Literally. Because so many people think it's a major mitzvah. In some regards it is. You have a Purim or something like that. I don't drink on Purim, but there is a mitzvah to drink. Adela yada. Some of where people are coming from, I've had people come up to me and say, quote Gemaras of why I should drink. It's crazy. It's crazy. Ushmartim l'nafshei seichem. Hashem gives people whatever they have, whatever keli he puts you in. Some people have physical disabilities. Some people have mental disabilities. Some people can't learn Black Gemara like everybody else. You're not going to say there's a mitzvah to walk through Eretz Yisrael. So are we going to start throwing Gemaras at people in wheelchairs because they can't walk? You're going to say there's Bakam and how Hashem created this person because Hashem knew what he was doing when he created people. Hashem, when he created me, I was going to have this issue. Maybe it was to be mechazik people, maybe whatever it was. Maybe it was what I needed to go through to come out with the hashkafas achayim that I have. I'm not so audacious to say that I was created my way for other people totally, but the Berditchever actually brings that Hashem, one of the reasons why Hashem created so many different types of people is because when you read a Bereshis Bara Elikim, Asa Shamayim V'Asa Aretz, you learn out something different than I learn out. And I can only learn what I learned from it because I grew up in the 90s and in a predominantly Black neighborhood and grew up doing what I did, and now I'm here. You can't have my interpretation of that pasuk the way that I can't have your interpretation of that pasuk. And that's why there's Shiva Panim LaTorah, because the Torah is infinite in the way that you're, of course, pshat is pshat, but you're what that pasuk means to you. And the Berditchever even says that a person has a chiyuv to share whatever their remez is with others, because you can't get it. And it's only when I share it with you that you can now get it.
Beautiful. Okay, as we wind down, I'm going to ask you some of our favorite questions. If you could spend the time with one person from history for an hour, who would you spend that time with?
I would daven for Mashiach because I have more than one person I'd like to meet.
Oh.
It's really, really hard. Really, really hard.
It's a hard question, but it's also, there's no wrong answer. So I'm putting a gun to your head.
Right. I would say I would say I have sort of, if you will, a microscopic and a macroscopic response.
Okay.
And I'll say it quickly.
Let's
a
go
microscopic one would be, I would want to go back a few generations and sort of like meet my great grandparents to see the struggles that they went through to get me to where I am now, and just talk to them and hope that the lifestyle that I'm living and the choices I make would allow them to know that their struggles were all worth it. On both sides of my family, just to be clear. Other than that, I would want to meet Reish Lakish.
I think you're the first person to say Reish. Why Reish Lakish?
So Reish Lakish also had a past. Reish Lakish was involved in things that we would call thuggery.
Yeah.
And the first time I heard that about him, to know that there was a Tana that sort of made this shift in life that I can identify with, I would want to meet them, and I would want to meet him, because you can go from literally the bottom of the bottom and become a Tana, powerful.
Mm.
That's powerful.
Out of the 613 mitzvahs, do you have one in particular that's your favorite?
Tefillin.
Tefillin. Why tefillin?
So Gemara says when Moshe Rabbeinu asked to see Hashem's presence, Hashem said, you could only see my back. And the Gemara says that he saw the kasher shel tefillin of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the knot. A few months ago, I read from Rabbi Pinchas Friedman, who's Belzer Rosh Colel, and he says that, you know the knot of the tefillin has the right strap and the left strap. And the right side is gevura and the left side is chesed, strength and kindness, or strength more representing strict judgment. We have the world, and it's hard to make heads or tails of the challenges and stem them, meld them together with the overwhelming love and kindness we can feel in the same world. And why did Moshe Rabbeinu see the kesher shel tefillin? Because the kesher shel tefillin of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is where the right side of gevura din and the left side of chesed met.
I think it's the reverse, by the way.
Oh,
Right
probably.
is chesed and left is gevura.
Right. Okay.
But maybe in this knot, it's reversed because it's a knot. I
So
don't
it
know.
could be.
Yeah.
I have a tendency to mix things up
No, it's all good,
sometimes.
it's all good.
The point is the same, which
It's
is that
tied together.
that's where it meets,
Mhm.
and that's where it all makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And in Hashem's tefillin, it says Micha Amcha Yisroel, so forth, and we have Hashem's name in our tefillin, and part of it is because it's a mitzvah we share with Hashem, and part of it is that somewhere on the deepest level of the mitzvah of tefillin, it all makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And from an outside perspective, it's like the most bizarre looking mitzvah, right?
Yeah.
But it's really where things are the most bizarre that is where you can make sense of everything.
Is there a story in your life that you maybe heard or that happened in your life that gives you chizik, that gives you strength?
For sure. I would say if I had to choose one, it'd be a story of the Toldos Yaakov Yosef, who was a misnagid who wrote the first Sefer Chassidish called the Toldos Yaakov Yosef. The Toldos Yaakov Yosef was opposed to the Baal Shem. Toldos Yaakov Yosef was a very, very fiery Jew. And he was actually so fiery, so strict, that the Baal Shem decided that it had to be probably someone else who took the mantle of leadership, because the Toldos Yaakov Yosef is such a fiery Jew. He's so black and white, can't see the gray. And to have a leader, you have to have someone who could see the gray. So the Toldos Yaakov Yosef gets to shul one morning and sees no one's there. So he goes to the Gabbai, he says, where's everybody at? And so the Gabbai says they're in the shuk and they're listening to stories from the Baal Shem, Yisroel Baal Shem. And he said, go get them. The time for davening is arriving. We can't be late. So the Gabbai leaves and he didn't come back. Toldos Yaakov Yosef had enough. He said, I'm going to go down and I'm going to get everybody. These people are crazy. So he got down, and there's a crowd of people sitting in the town. And he walks to the front of the pack, and he's ready to rip the Baal Shem apart for distracting all the people from the important mitzvah of davening gizmanai. But there's an aspect of the story that catches his attention. And when the story is over, he asks the Baal Shem, but what about this? He says, Yisroel, Toldos Yaakov Yosef said, Yisroel, but what about this? Baal Shem Tov provides him an answer. And he said, but Reb Yisroel, what about that? Baal Shem gives him another answer. He says, but Rebbe, explain this to me. And it's said that the Toldos Yaakov Yosef saw himself in that story. You could focus on the externalities about what's different. but we're all human beings. We all have certain commonalities, no matter what our upbringing is. There's certain feelings that we share. Fear is the same feeling. No matter what the impetus of fear is, it's the same feeling. Whatever anxiety is, joy is, it's the same feeling. No matter what precipitates that feeling, it's the same. And to go back to that Gemara of a person cannot learn Torah other than where their heart desires. Your heart, we say in Shema, right? That v'lo sasuru achrei levavchem ra'achrei nechem, your heart should see something. Well, what I would want to say is that the Gemara, where your heart desires, is your heart has to see where you belong. It should be in the Miskeres of Yiddishkeit, but your heart has to see where you belong. And when your heart finds your story, it's a game changer. And when I heard that story, it all made sense to me. That's why I feel like this is where I belong. That's why we made such a radical change in my family. You said, 20 years ago, I was a nudnik high school football playing kid, and just fighting, making nonsense, just being a dumb kid. And now, Hashem, I have such a large family, so many kids. We just married one, 2 boys in yeshiva, another kid just graduated high school. Why would somebody change all that for all these different people? Why would somebody feel so strongly? And the answer is because this is where I saw my story. This is where I saw my story, the story of Colel Yisroel. And maybe I shouldn't give answers of why I wanted to become this. It was just, I felt it. I knew it. It's an experiential truth. So that story is really what cemented that change for me.
Wow. It's really powerful. Okay, I have one more question I want to finish off with. But before, I've been getting flack whenever I have someone on who's a baal teshuva or a ger. So many from birth people are so curious. I don't know, this is what yeshiva guys talk about. So I'm going to start asking, what is one of the foods when you weren't keeping kosher that you wish that they either, I don't know, made kosher or they you really miss?
Everyone in my family is thinking Chinese food, but thank God Chinese food is a Jewish pastime, so there's plenty of kosher Chinese food. Popeye's chicken.
Popeye's chicken. What's so good about it?
It's another one of those experiential truths.
Okay,
I don't know how else to put it.
Hopefully we'll get the OU on the case. And I mean, it's chicken. I mean, I'm sure the ingredients are probably, interesting. Okay, cool. Cool answer. Okay, last question. If you could talk to yourself at 22, at that darkest point in your life, or to really anyone going through that, again, it's not the same struggle, but that same feeling of struggle, what advice would you give?
So I would go back earlier than 22.
Okay.
Probably the first time I felt that first drink and it made me not care. Because the feeling of not caring is what I was chasing. That's the feeling other people share from kids, not from, but from kids.
That's what alcoholics, that's what you look for.
These are the most sensitive, caring people you've ever met. And they're the canaries in the coal mine. The pressure of caring so much is what bothers them. And to have something that allows you to feel, I just don't care, provides that reprieve. It provides that allowance to just, it doesn't matter. And that's what they're chasing. But in real life, they do care. They feel that the other people around them don't. They feel that people care about the wrong things. And the advice that I would give, I wouldn't give myself any advice. I'm happy with where I am. And to want to change my past is to say that Shem did something wrong in my life. And that's something I can't believe. But what I would tell kids is develop trust. and find adults that you can trust. Because these same chevra that are chasing that feeling of not caring, because the pressure of life, the pressure of yeshiva, the pressure of everything that they're going through is just too much for them. Find people that you can trust to help you work through it, and just hang on tight and stick with the program. The wider yeshiva system is a very hard system. If I was raised in it, I don't know where I would be. I can't answer that honestly. Wouldn't be one of these super stark guys, with one of the Masmidim awards. I don't think that would have been me. I'm that now, and I love it. I love it. Every opportunity I get to learn, I will, and I can, and I want to.
You even said you were going to come a little earlier. You're like, is there a base medrash around that I could you live up to it?
So I think for a lot of these people, just hang on tight. Don't do anything that's so crazy that it's going to throw you off the wagon. Just hang tight as hard as it is. Find someone you can trust, an uncle, a rav, a younger man, a cousin, anybody that you know you can trust and be open with and share with and let it all out. And let out your mishugas with them, with a good, healthy person that's going to put you in the right direction and keep you on the right path. Because it's hard being a kid. It's confusing being a kid. And you think you know so much. And one of my biggest blessings were my two older kids. I never told them this before. But grew up so much from them. I see myself in them. And I just want to grab a hold of them. They're great kids. One just got married. Such sweet kids, but they were questioning. And they were pushing, and they were trying to figure it out and hash it out. That's Bavli, that's Shas, that's what we do. Got to work it out. Kashas, steers. Doesn't always make sense. It's the most Jewish process to give these kids an environment where they could work it out. Because they're going to work it out. And Moshe Weinberger told me, he said that they're either going to work it out with you or without you. And you want to make sure that you're part of the process. And everybody should want to be part of the process. That's the advice that I would give them. Hang on tight. Find people you can trust. Trust is hard because you feel like people are going to burn you. I was at the kosher gas station in Lakewood, right off of Route 9 and County Line. I was walking out and I saw 3 Bachrim rolling up a blunt. But those people are maybe too naive to know what that is. So they went in, bought a cigar, emptied it, and filled it with weed, probably. Hopefully that was it. And I noticed it. 3 kids, white shirts. One of them even still had his hat and jacket on. It's like, what? So I walk up to him in a white shirt, and they're like going out of their kalim. The one kid like floors it. I stuck my hand in the car. I almost took my arm off, but I guess one of my tattoos showed, and they stopped, and they just listened. One of the kids in the car knew too much already. He didn't want to hear what I had to say. That was where he was, but the other guys really looked at me. I gave them my phone number. Said, if you ever guys want to come out of town for Shabbos and your parents are okay with it, you're more than welcome to come to Philadelphia. They never called me. If they still have my number, the option is still available. And if anybody, any guy wants to talk, email me. I'm more than happy to listen. That's what I did. I found people, which maybe it was a little audacious of me, but I found the people that dealt with my questions, and I went after them.
Mm-hmm.
Moshe Weinberger or Y.Y. Jacobson. These are bigger names, but I called them. I sent them emails. I tracked them down. I need to talk to you because of what you said in this year. It resonates with me.
Mm-hmm.
And they made the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they answered questions. And they were good, healthy resources to help me deal with, because I didn't mention it, but once I became frum, I felt like there was an issue between being, in recovery and being frum.
Mm-hmm.
And the Shais Taubes of the world and the, Rabbi Twersky's Zatzal of the world. I was able to listen to them and work it out. And those are people who are mamish. And I think Rabbi Twersky had a rehab in Pennsylvania somewhere. So, the other Rabbanim that I spoke to are in the Parsha. I mean, they deal with people with these things, but they weren't in it in the same way that Rabbi Twersky was. Not that I really had any ability to be so close with him, but to see that there's good, meaningful, mainstream, normal from people. At the top of the food chain, so to speak. They get it. I've been zeiche to meet with a lot of meaningful people and important people in our community. Moshe Lease, I had a conversation with him, not about addiction or anything, but about other things. And Rav David Cohn. And we have a family Rav that's a Mara Tzedek in BMG. These are the most understanding, cool people that you'd ever meet. And it's like you would think like they embody everything that bothers me. They're the most down-to-earth, cool people. And I really think that's why sometimes I haven't ran into the struggles that other Baalei Tshuva had, because I never really had this pink, fluffy vision that being frum was going to solve all my life issues. Mm-hmm. Frum people have problems too. One of my best friends said, you know what the difference between Jews and non-Jews are? We both have problems. We have a toolbox to deal with our problems. That's the Torah.
Wow.
And you got to find someone that could help you open up that toolbox and figure it out, no matter what your issues are. And if you're one that would think that whatever he's dealing with or they're dealing with is much worse than anything, chas v'shalom. No. It's the same feeling. The alienation, the anxiety, the fear, the pressure. I lived in both worlds. I lived in North Philly. I lived in Abington Township. I lived a non-frum life. I lived a frum life. I'm not trying to minimize the social pressures and the things that we have to deal with. Feelings are feelings. And feelings don't change depending on what your belief system is, or what your station is in life. Your belief system obviously can inform your feelings, explain your feelings, and we happen to have an excellent way of doing that. But yeah, it's all the same feeling. If you're thinking that you want to look at the differences instead of the similarities, if that's your first response, you need help. You need help, and there's nothing wrong with getting help, talking to someone. Just find a lady you could talk to. Guys, find someone you could talk to. Maybe it doesn't, just talk it out with somebody.
Amazing. Well, Reb Joe, thank you for coming here, opening up, sharing your story, sharing your thoughts, and the email, your email, if someone wants to reach out to you.
Sure.
I'm just giving you a warning. Anyone, 100% of the time we give them the email, they always respond, I didn't realize how many people would be reaching out. So, but after that, if you want to give it, it's up to you.
Okay. Thank God. I'd rather I'd rather get an email from a live person than from an ad. So
okay. Okay.
Help me out a little bit.
Sure.
You can email me at jwaslow@gmail.com.
Okay.
It's JWASLOW, the letter INS @gmail.com.
Okay. Reb Joe, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Yaakov.
If you made it to the deep end, thank you. And please let us know. Use the word soul. And of course, share words of encouragement with Yosef because he will be looking at the Spotify and YouTube comments. And thank you to this week's sponsors, Colel Chabad, Lease, Bitbean, Qualify Whey Protein, the OU Women's Initiative, and the Chofetz Chaim Heritage Foundation. Go check all of them out, please. Now, one of the biggest misconceptions is that changing the world starts with changing everyone else. It doesn't. The world changes one person at a time, and the only person you have complete control of is over yourself. And we spend so much energy wishing people were more patient, more grateful, more honest, more compassionate. But imagine if every ounce of that energy was redirected inward. What if instead of asking, how can I get others to change, we ask, how can I become the kind of person who can change the room just by walking in it? Your inner world always spills into your outer world, and a calmer person creates a calmer family, a more patient parent raises more secure children, and more forgiving spouses build a stronger marriage. As we know, a more honest leader creates a healthier workplace. One person's character becomes the atmosphere everyone else breathes. And we see this through Yosef and the inner work that he did. And the loudest moments often get the attention, the speeches, the protests, the headlines, the viral posts, but history is also shaped by the quiet victories. No one applauds, a person swallowing their pride, someone choosing kindness instead of anger, a parent putting away their phone to truly listen, a person admitting they were wrong, and those moments rarely make the news, but they shape generations. So Judaism teaches that before we repair the world, we must repair ourselves. The work of refining our midos, our character, is not a side project. It is the project, and every act of self-improvement ripples outward in ways we may never fully see. When you become less reactive, your children learn emotional regulation. When you become more generous, your friends become more generous. And when you choose faith over fear, hope over cynicism, discipline over comfort, the people around you begin to change too. The greatest revolutions rarely begin in the streets, they begin in the heart. Because when you transform yourself, you don't just become a different person, you create a different world for everyone who knows you. Remember, inspiration's everywhere. L'chaim.
Living L'chaim.